Colombian security forces have captured the country's most wanted drug trafficker, a rural warlord who stayed on the run for more than a decade by corrupting state officials and aligning himself with combatants on the left and right. Let's check out how Colombia's richest drug lord, Otoniel, was captured. Number 6. How was he caught? Otoniel was captured in his rural hideout. The operation involved 500 soldiers supported by 22 helicopters. One police officer was killed. Otoniel had used a network of rural safe houses to move around and evade the authorities, and he did not use a phone, instead relying on couriers for communication. In the past, police may have found special orthopedic mattresses for Otoniel in these sparse homes, as he suffered from back pain from a herniated disc. Police Chief Jorge Vargas has said the drug lord was fearful of capture, never approaching inhabited areas. But El Tiempo newspaper said that authorities managed to pinpoint the location where he was eventually caught 2 weeks ago. Chief Vargas said his movements were traced by more than 50 signal intelligence experts using satellite imagery. US and UK agencies were involved in the search. Mr. Duke, quoted by AFP news agency, described the operation as the biggest penetration of the jungle ever seen in the military history of our country. Colombia's armed forces later released a photo showing its soldiers guarding Otoniel, who was in handcuffs and wearing rubber boots. There have been several huge operations involving thousands of officers to capture the 50-year-old in recent years, but until now, none have been successful. There's no doubt this is seen as a coup by the Colombian authorities. They've been trying to capture Otoniel for several years now. The Gulf Cartel is a formidable and violent organization with a great deal of power, and the comparisons with Pablo Escobar are understandable. Otoniel has been a household name and has been hugely powerful, especially in the northwest of the country. But the parallels with Pablo Escobar perhaps stop there. Otoniel is not as well known outside of Colombia. And if you speak to people who lived in the country at the peak of Pablo Escobar's power, many feel that they were more frightening times. The question is, will Otoniel's capture impact the trade of the illicit drugs? It's hard to know now. We'll have to see what happens in the coming months, but most experts seem to think that while demand for cocaine seems strong, it's likely there will be new capos rising to the top to replace him. Number 5. Kingpin strategy. Otoniel, Colombia's most sought-after drug trafficker and leader of the Clan del Golfo, has been captured at his jungle hideout by the country's armed forces. Mr. Duke said during a broadcast video message, "This blow is only comparable to the fall of Pablo Escobar in the 1990s. After stints as a left-wing guerrilla and later paramilitary, Otoniel, who was 50, rose to become the leader of the criminal gang Clan del Golfo, or Gulf Clan, a drug trafficking group. Authorities said intelligence provided by the US and UK led more than 500 soldiers and members of Colombia's special forces to Otoniel's jungle hideout, which was protected by 8 rings of security. Otoniel, for years, flew under the radar of authorities by eschewing the high profile of Colombia's better-known narcos. Experts say Otoniel's capture falls in line with a military tactic used in Latin America known as the kingpin strategy, in which security forces seek to take out the leader of an armed group in order to topple its criminal enterprises. This strategy was used in the killing of 1993 of Escobar, who at the time was the leader of the Colombian Medellin cartel, as well as the capture in 2016 of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the former leader of the Mexican Sinaloa cartel. But this tactic has been long criticized by experts who say it often has the opposite of the intended effect, creating infighting within armed groups and new struggles for territorial power, and in turn generating more violence. They say this was the case following the capture of Guzman and the killing of Escobar. A Colombian human rights defender who has received death threats from the Gulf Clan over her work advocating for victims of conflict said she is worried Otoniel's arrest could in fact increase violence in her home area, Los Montes de Maria, the sweltering northern area which saw a brief respite in violence when the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, signed a peace pact with the Colombian government in 2016. is a strategic drug route and a historic hub for armed groups. The Gulf Clan and the Montes de Maria get stronger every day, said the human rights defender who wished to remain anonymous. Every day, their forces grow. They may have taken out the boss, but there are other bosses and other gangs that keep gaining control, she said. Instead of reducing the violence is only going to get worse. These people are going to continue arming, they're going to continue threatening us, and they're going to continue extorting. Number 4. Biggest drug kingpin in Colombia. He has long been a fixture on the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration's most wanted fugitives list. He has a $5 million reward ongoing for his capture. His arrest is something of a boost for the conservative president Mr. Duque, whose law and order rhetoric has been no match for soaring cocaine production. A man stands at a podium addressing the camera with other officials and army surrounding him. Though Mr. Duque said Otoniel's capture represented the end of the Gulf Clan, Colombia Risk Analysis Director Sergio Guzman said a new leader would surely be waiting to take over. It's a big deal because he's the biggest drug kingpin in Colombia, Mr. Guzman said, but added that the capture would not change the fundamentals of drug trafficking. Otoniel is bound to be replaced. Number 3. Sending drugs to the U.S. He was first indicted in 2009 in Manhattan's federal court on narcotics charges and for allegedly providing assistance to a far-right paramilitary group designated a terrorist organization by the U.S. government. Later indictments in Brooklyn and Miami federal courts accused him of importing into the U.S. at least 73 metric tons of cocaine between 2003 and 2014. But like many of his gunmen, he also cycled through the ranks of several guerrilla groups, most recently claiming to lead the Gaitanist Self-Defense Forces of Colombia after a mid-20th century Colombian leftist firebrand. Number 2. Who is Otoniel? Born in Antioquia in the early 1970s, Otoniel jumped between several guerrilla and paramilitary groups, including the FARC, the major Marxist-Leninist rebel group, and the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, a far-right paramilitary and drug trafficking gang. When the AUC dissolved in 2005, he began working for the drug lord Daniel Herrera, known as Don Mario, head of the Urabeños, which later became known as the Gulf Clan. Otoniel then took charge of the group after its previous leader, his brother, was killed by police in a raid on a New Year's Eve party almost 10 years ago. Colombia security forces labeled the gang as the country's most powerful criminal organization, while authorities in the U.S. describe it as heavily armed and extremely violent. The gang, which operates in many provinces and has extensive international connections, is engaged in drug and people smuggling, illegal gold mining, and extortion. It is believed to have 1,800 armed members who are mainly recruited from far-right paramilitary groups. The gang controls many of the routes used to smuggle drugs from Colombia to the US and as far away as Russia. The Colombian government, however, believes it has decimated its numbers in recent years, forcing many leading members to hide in remote regions in the jungle. Otoniel now faces a number of charges, including sending shipments of cocaine to the US, killing police officers, and recruiting children. Since he was indicted in the US in 2009 and faces extradition proceedings, he could eventually appear in court in New York. Number 1. Compared to the capture of Escobar. Colombia's President Iván Duque compared Saturday's arrest to the fall of Pablo Escobar, the Colombian drug lord killed in a police shootout in 1993. This is the hardest blow to drug trafficking this century in our country, Duque said. Elias Otoniel was the most feared drug lord in the world, a murderer of police, soldiers, local activists, he added. The arrest was the biggest penetration of the jungle ever seen in the military history of our country, Duque said. He also urged other members of the cartel to turn themselves in or feel the full weight of the law. Usuga stands accused of various crimes, including drug trafficking, murder, extortion, kidnapping, conspiracy, and illegal recruitment of minors. US and British authorities were also informed about the details of the arrest. Do let us know in the comments if you have any more information about this arrest. Please subscribe to The Luxury World. Thanks for watching.